Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. Hope your Wednesday's gone very, very well. It's the last Wednesday before Christmas and the last EFL Debate Championship podcast. We've not got Ollie Mann on, our usual co-host. He's out at a Christmas do this evening, but we're delighted to be joined by Southampton podcaster Martin Sanders, who's very kindly agreed to step in. Good evening, Martin. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Gab. Are you all right?
Yeah, great to have you on the podcast. I'm sure we'll get on to Southampton's unbeaten run in a moment. For now, we're joined by Sam Ucko from WD18 fans. How are you, Sam?
I'm all good, mate. Merry Christmas, guys. Hope it's preparations are all going well for that. I'm just more looking forward to the festive football, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Merry Christmas to you too. Just wondering, I mean, Watford seem to be on a real resurgence at the moment, and it feels like some of the feel-good factors coming back to Vicarage Road.
Exactly that. The feel-good factor is back. I think we're on a run now of 10 to 12 games where we've only lost 2, and they were against Leicester and Ipswich, which most sides in the league are going to be turning around and saying that come the end of the season as well. So we're on the up. I think the most pleasing thing for me is that the performances have been absolutely brilliant recently. And I think we can argue that we probably should have taken more points from the games that we've got so far, which is only a good sign. Obviously, Martin here, Southampton fan, we really should have won that game in hindsight. And ultimately, we didn't take our opportunities in the first half, and we had to rely on a sort of I mean, it was a weird one, actually, because I thought Bazunu was fantastic up until the 97th minute where he let Reece Healy's goal in. But ultimately, I think there are some more games we should have won. I think we should have probably beaten Ipswich as well. Should have beaten Huddersfield in that run. But the fact that we're there, we're building some sort of consistency. I think Valball is really emerged now as well, which is brilliant. He's improving players. So, yeah, it's a good time to be a Watford fan at the moment.
Martin, what did you make of Watford when Southampton played them?
Oh, I thought they were a really good side. I thought they were well organised, well drilled. The manager's got a style of play that he wants them to play, but I think they're really going to push now. They're a side that, like Sam's saying, they're just really starting to find their groove, aren't they? And yeah, it was a hard test for us. You know, it was a really, really tough game. And like Sam said, they could have actually won the game. Bazunu's made a lot of saves in that game. Unfortunate with the last one, but we come under a bit of pressure, and I'm glad the game ended when it did, to be honest.
Sam, what do you think Watford are going to need in January? Because at the moment you're looking like you're possible contenders for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think what we've got at the moment compared to recent years where it's been one or two standouts, it's a really well-rounded side at the moment where I don't think there's any obvious weakness. I think other than the striker that we really need in that Southampton game. I think if we have a striker like Armstrong or something like that, I think we ultimately we win that game and we pick up more points. So I think the striker for me is the big priority. I think we could probably do with a central midfielder. Edo Kiembe is going off to AFCON with the Congo. Jake Livermore has missed a game recently. I think it was the Southampton game due to injury as well, and he's been brilliant for us recently. But at 34 years of age, how reliable is he? Sure. And I think as well, the goalkeepers are really, really weird ones. Obviously, Dan Batman's come out of the side. Ben Hamer's now come into it. And while there are a few shaky moments, he's won 2 games for us recently single-handedly. The away game against Hull, where he was absolutely brilliant, saved a penalty. And I know we beat Preston 5-1, and it sounds weird saying our best player was a goalkeeper when we scored 5 goals. But if it wasn't for him, if you watch the highlights, I think I think according to like stats pages, he prevented something like 3.1 goals or something during the game, which is just ridiculous numbers. So Ben Hamer's growing on me in goal, definitely. But I think I would say centre mid striker and probably another goalkeeper too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I suppose touching on that midfield area, one of the things I'd been really impressed with, Sam, in your run had been that left-sided combination between Jamal Lewis, Ismail Kone and Ken Sema. And what actually surprised me a little bit was that for North End game, I think it was, you actually saw Kone move over to the right side of the midfield three and Kiembe on the left. But obviously you can't argue with the outcome of that, can you?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it was also because I think what we're seeing is we want to get Kiembe further up the pitch. as possible. And because we were out, Ryan Andrews was rested, and we played Tom Bashiru, who's normally a central midfielder. We played him at right back against Preston. I think we just had Kone there to provide that extra bit of cover. I think you're spot on, though. I think Ken Sema's having a brilliant season yet again. He's just cut out for this level. The perfect championship player every time he's in there.
So consistent at this level, isn't
So
he?
consistent, yeah, exactly. I think his output could probably still be a bit better, but what he brings to the team is absolutely brilliant. Ismail Kone, I'd argue, one of our players of the season. He's just been named Canada's Young Player of the Year last week as well, which is brilliant for him. Jamal Lewis is a bit of a weird one, a bit hot and cold sometimes. I said last time he was on the up, he had a bit of a down against Ipswich, didn't have the best game against them. But I still think he's been really, really valuable for us. But like you say, the left-hand side's great. You can switch it up and move Kiambi over to the right or Kone over to the right, and it's still well balanced. So credit to Val for that.
I'm just wondering. I rate Hull very highly. West Brom, I think, have got probably the best manager in the league in Carlos Corberán, and I think the top four, each of the current top four will finish in the top six in some capacity. So that does leave only two spaces open. Do you think Watford have what it takes to do it this season, or does it feel a bit more like a building season where you're actually putting some foundations in place to maybe have a go in future campaigns?
Yeah, I don't think we've got enough this season, to be honest with you. I would have previously said that was down to consistency, but now we are picking up that consistent run of form. I think there are just a few elements to it. I think this is a young team on the whole. I know we've got the likes of Livermore in there and Hamer, but the likes of Kone, Asprilla, Ryan Andrews, Porteous, they're all still learning players, I think, and we have to give them that time to really bed into Valérien Ismaël's system as well. I think, look, a lot of Watford fans, if you said to us at the start of the season, come Christmas, we'll be even in the conversation for a top six place, having stuck with Valérien Ismaël and playing good football, we're seeing the intangibles there, the effort and the desire for the badge. I think most Watford fans would have taken that. So if we don't get top six, it's not necessarily a bad season, because I think we're certainly on the right lines to make a real push for it next year.
Yeah, well, hopefully you can do that. What are your feelings, just before I let you go, on the structural side of Watford and where you're at? You've obviously seen Ben Manga leave as sporting director. 1-2 people have left as well. Do you feel you're making some progress from that perspective?
Yes and no. I think for as well as things going on the pitch, it's still as chaotic as ever off it, to be honest with you. Cristiano Gioretta left the club last week as well. Yeah. Which was certainly interesting, because following Ben Manga's exit, we were sort of told that Gioretta was going to have more control, and that lasted about a month before he's now been let go. And supposedly, I think it's to give Valérien Ismaël more power in the window. Gianluca Nani's been brought back in, having been with us back in 2012 as well. And he's supposedly got a good network around him. But so, yeah, it'll be interesting. It does unsettle me a bit, because you do feel like at board level, things could explode at any moment. And we go on a game of three. We go on a run of, say, 3 defeats in a row. Valérien Ismaël's under pressure automatically. So, yeah, I'm still not convinced behind the scenes, but on the pitch, delighted at the moment.
Sam, thanks so much for your time. Keep up the great work with WD18 fans, and Merry Christmas, mate.
Pleasure as always. Merry Christmas, guys.
Cheers, Sam.
Martin, I want to ask you about Southampton and the run that you're at the moment, because last time you came on this podcast, you talked about the impact Flynn Downes has had, but you're actually without him for the previous game, and you had Shay Charles starting in that 4-0 victory over Blackburn Rovers. Do you feel like you've found a formula that can allow you to play without? What am I talking about? Flynn Downes. I'm sure there was another game where
he missed the Coventry game. He missed the Coventry game away, and he missed the game before Coventry was at Watford. He missed the Watford game, and they were both tough games. They were both really hard games, and never easy place to go to, Vicarage Road. But yeah, he come back in on Saturday against Blackburn, and he was unbelievable. He was brilliant again, and we look such a better side when Flynn's in. But you go all the way back now to the 23rd of September was the last time we lost a game. That was away at Middlesbrough, but since then, that Leeds United win at home, it's really kicked us on. We're still missing a couple of players, probably, in my opinion, but there's a very nice togetherness being built around the football club. Russell Martin is very much, he's trying to interact with the fans. He's got the fans on side. There's a real good feel-good factor around the home stadium now. The home form has been good. I just think the away form will need to be a little bit better if we want a challenge for second spot. I think it will be a mission, but I think with the right acquisitions in January, we'd have a really good chance in pushing second.
What do the right acquisitions look like?
Well, we're not playing without an out-and-out 9 at the moment. So the last couple, well, he played Che Adams for a couple of games. He's come in because of injuries and the way we had to set up. But he didn't really play through the middle. On Saturday, they had a rotation between Joe Aribo, who's come back in and done fairly well, to be honest. Stuart Armstrong playing in one of those forward positions as well, and Adam Armstrong and Samuel Udoji. So sort of like the four are almost rotate and drop in and play false nines. And look, it works. It worked okay against a very poor Blackburn side of the weekend. They were really, really poor. Saints play well, but Blackburn didn't turn up in this one. But we've been tested against Watford, tested against Ipswich, and the games you really need to try and pick up. You know, if you want to get automatic, you don't want to lose, but you want to be putting a. You know, we've looked a little bit goal shy in a couple of those games prior to putting those 4+, but Blackburn at the weekend at St Mary's.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. In terms of other areas of the squad, I look at the centre-back position. You've now got Jack Stevens back fit. You've got Taylor Harwood-Bellis, who I rate very highly at this level, and Jan Bednarek's actually stayed in spite of Jack Stevens being back fit again. And you've also brought Mason Holgate in as well. So does that centre-back position look a bit stronger than maybe we were talking about earlier in the season?
Yeah, Gab, it's very, very strong centre-back for us at the moment. Harwood-Bellis has come in and formed a really nice partnership with Jan Bednarek. They've played really well, and Jack Stevens did get the final part of the game at the weekend. He did bring him in, and he looked, he took the armband off Adam Armstrong straight away. He's desperate to play. I think that he'll come back in the side, Jack Stevens. I think he will partner Jan Bednarek at the back. Mason Holgate's contract will be terminated in January, I believe. Everton want him playing football. He's fourth choice beyond them all now, so he's not looking like he's going to get any game time with us. So they'll let him go in January. He'll go back to Everton, and Saints will use that money because they're paying him a fairly big chunk of that salary that he was on at Everton. It's rumoured around 50%. So they could use that money, and if they really wanted to go and get a striker, Danny Ings has been spoke about at West Ham. If they wanted to go and spend that money on maybe someone else on loan, there's a potential to free up those wages and do that, which I like to see them do. I like to see them go and get a striker. I think with Ross Stewart not being fit, I think it's vital there's somebody brought in that's gonna help Adam Armstrong, because if he gets injured, that we'll be struggling.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. In terms of other areas, Stuart Armstrong, from one Armstrong to another, if you like, he's been putting in some fantastic performances on that left side of the midfield three, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been brilliant. He was outstanding against Blackburn. He was awarded the man of the match on the PA at the stadium, and most of the match reports you see that he was outstanding, scored again. He's involved in everything good about Southampton at the moment. He's formed a really good partnership in there with Downs and Smallbone, and they link well, but they all rotate so well as well. So he kind of almost, he can go out and play it wide, but he likes to come inside. He spends a lot of time in sort of like the more central role in midfield as well. So it works really well. The one player that's really surprised me in his role at the weekend was Carl Walker-Peters, who was actually playing as a left back. He brought James Breen at right back. It works so much better, but the fact that Carl Walker-Peters could come in, he was playing that inverted role and almost played as a 10 at times, as an attacking midfielder. And some of the football he played was outstanding. He was so good, so important we keep him in January. I know there's clubs sniffing one of those to be West Ham. Really, really important that they keep hold of him because he's been brilliant. He's played every second of every game for us. I think he's the only outfield player in the Championship to do so. He's been, I can't speak highly enough.
What would you sell him for, Martin? If you were in the club's position in January, what would it take for a Premier League club to buy Kyle Walker-Peters?
Well, many fans talk upwards of 30 million for him, which is big sums of money. It's huge sums of money. You look at James Ward-Prowse, it went for 30, 35 million. He's as good as important now as James was to us. He looks to really be enjoying his football, though. He'll have Premier League aspirations, no doubt. But I think if the football club want to be really ambitious and really look to challenge Ipswich and Leeds, which I feel with a good January, keep the nucleus of what they've got there. They don't really want to sell to anybody if they can. They might let a few go out on loan, but maybe add a striker and a winger, and they'd be absolutely golden for the final part of their season, and they can really, really push on because that home form's good. St Mary's was not the greatest of venues for us, but 5 games that we've won in a row at home. It's the first time we've done that since Ronald Koeman was the Southampton manager, and we're going back a long way now. So the signs are a lot more positive than they were.
Certainly are. Martin, you mentioned there that you've got a really good chance of catching Ipswich, and I'm a little bit surprised how confident you are, because I would have probably had Southampton nailed down as likely to finish in the playoffs, because 10 points, although it's not irretrievable as a gap, it is quite a big gap at this stage when you look at the consistency Ipswich are showing and how well they're playing. So what gives you that confidence that Southampton could still make that 10-point gap up?
I just think that the home form looks really good. The fact that Colin Calderwood's come in, he's having a massive impact. There's no doubt about that. That we're keeping clean sheets, and that's something that we had an inability to do. So the fact that we just become so much more consistent than we have done, we don't let a lot of goals in. And if they can recruit well in January, which, with the parachute payments and with the noises that are coming out of the football club, they'll probably sell Shay Adams in January, but it won't be a blow because he doesn't get any game time. If we could use a bit of the money, there'd be a bit left over as well. If they're ambitious, which I think the ownership are, I just think that they're in a strong position with the finances of coming down from the Premier League. It is a big gap to make up, but I just think the consistency at the moment looks good. The fixtures over the festive period look quite favourable, other than maybe Norwich away on New Year's Day. I like the look of the 2 home games, QPR at the weekend. That's followed up by Swansea at home and Plymouth Argyle at home. So Plymouth don't travel well. Swansea being Russell Martin's ex-club. I think there's 2 really good home games there. They look to be sellouts. They've opened up extra blocks in the stadium with more availability for home fans. So they're just looking to do everything they can now to really get as many bodies in that ground and get behind the Saints and give it a really good go now.
Yeah, well, let's hope you can do that. Obviously, the big news in the Championship this week was that Steven Schumacher has left Plymouth Argyle after winning the League One title last season to go to Stoke City. We're speaking to fans of a couple of clubs involved. These are pre-recorded segments, first of which being Dan from Every Step Along the Way podcast on Stoke City. Joined by Dan from the excellent Every Step Along the Way podcast on Stoke City. Thanks for joining us, Dan. Steven Schumacher is the new Stoke City manager. What's your reaction?
I'm really happy with it, to be fair. I think, we were somebody we mentioned when the job came up as, a different route we could have gone down. You're sort of looking at managers who were out there, you think, well, he was sort of earmarked by us on the pod as he'd done a good job, but we probably wouldn't go that way. We'd probably go the tried and tested route, another sort of Gary Rowett, Alex Neil type. But to be fair to the board, they interviewed long and hard by all reports, and they've sort of gone with their head coach as well. His official title as head coach, which is very different to what we usually have at Stoke. It's all good.
Yeah, and I think I don't think you achieve what Steven Schumacher has at Plymouth Argyle without being an excellent coach, because he actually got them to 80 points in his first season, taking over mid-season from Ryan Lowe, and that actually wasn't enough that time to make the top 6 in League One, but getting to 80 points was a fantastic achievement. And in the following season, 101 points in League One. So he clearly established real consistency in League One, and in the Championship, he's continued certainly the home form, got his side playing some really good football, and developed some top young players like Morgan Whittaker and Finn Azaz. At the same time, there's also part of me that's curious about how he's going to slot into the operation at Stoke, because Plymouth Argyle had a brilliant owner, really smart people behind the scenes. And I suppose I'm sitting in the unknown a little bit in terms of where Stoke City are at from an operational perspective.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, we've always given the manager complete control over everything. The managers sign, they have literally, they can run the football club basically however they want.
That's
And
a
I think,
perfectly normal way of doing things in the modern era, isn't it, Dan?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think what it is, I think it stems back. I think they're still looking for another Tony Pulis out there. Do you know what I mean? Because Tony would come in and everything was geared out exactly how we wanted. And obviously, we had great success.
Of course, yeah.
And obviously, I think as well that at that time, they were given a lot of praise. They were always praised. A club that gives the managers the free reign to do. Gives the managers free reign to do whatever they want. They can bring in whoever they want. The coaches, the players, everything can be exactly how they want it. And like I say, back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that was something they were praised for. And I think they've got stuck in that and not, like I say, come around to the modern way of doing things. So yeah, definitely now it seems like the last 12 months. I mean, in this summer, obviously, we had all the overhaul of the squad, we had 18 signings. But what we also did is we've also brought in Ricky Martin as the director of football. We brought in Jared Dublin as a head of recruitment.
Yeah.
And so what we've done, I know there was a meet the manager kind of event, or I think it was meet the management, and it was the three of them were there, and at the start of the season, and obviously what they said was that, and obviously the chairman, John Coates was there as well, and the question was, which was funnily enough, it was written by my sort of co-host on this podcast, Mike, but he very kindly attached my name to it, so he didn't get anything. It was like, when Alex Neil gets sacked, it's like, how wonderful. We're on this brave new thing. We just signed 18 players, and we're talking about when the guy who sat in front of us gets the chop. Like, he said, when he inevitably does leave the club, does it mean we have a massive overhaul again? All the people who've come in are his people, and they'll go with him, and or is it something different? And the reply was, well, we've put a structure in place now that should mean that a change in management has the minimal effect on the running of the club. So it sounds like we've finally been kicking and screaming, brought in line with everybody else. And obviously the title of head coach would also suggest that is the case for Schumacher, which I know he sort of was at Plymouth as well, wasn't he? So he'll sort of teacher, and maybe that's why they've recruited him as well, somebody who's familiar with that role, rather than a guy who maybe would have come in expecting a manager's role and knows all about how Stoke give all this power to him, and then find out that actually no.
Do you know what though? I actually think we kind of overestimate how much managers want power and control over the whole club. When I actually think for most managers it's a bit of a relief, that actually other things and operational things are kind of taken care of, and you've got Ricky Martin, as you mentioned, living La Vida Stoker. Had to throw that one in. I wanted to ask you, Dan, after 20 odd players came in the summer, with that comes an element of expectation, because there is obviously quality in the squad. So how much of it is the expectation in terms of we want to try and get results now, and how much of it is there sort of an acknowledgement that he's not necessarily inheriting a squad that was necessarily built for him?
I think that the more I've sort of read into him, I've seen sort of threads that scouts have done and stuff on sort of Twitter and that. And the more I read about it, the more I actually think our best players are suited to him and how he likes to play, especially with that sort of. I mean, it's the bane of most of the Stoke fans and probably most fans everywhere. But there's three at the back that everyone just thinks is defensive back five. I think he sort of, from what he did last season, getting 101 points and the amount of goals he scored in the home form, he's obviously a manager who's able to turn that into a positive and a positive tactic, which it can be. But I think too many managers end up making it, get sucked into making it a negative, don't they, with the extra defence. But yeah, look at the way he likes to set up. I think some of our key players, he could get the best out of them in the roles that he likes people to play around their positions. So it's really interesting to see like what recruitment he'll try to do. I'm sure he'll try and bring a goalkeeper in. He could try and bring a goal scorer, but obviously it's whether he thinks Ryan Mai is sort of starting to settle in now.
You've got Tommy Simpkin there, who had a really good loan spell at Solihull Moors. I mean, in terms of the long-term picture, he's quite an exciting prospect, isn't he?
Yeah, so he played the other week against Sheffield Wednesday, and although he did, don't get me wrong, there wasn't really any big shots at goal or anything like that. He wasn't like pulling off saves, but he looked very assured. He wasn't lacking in confidence. Bear in mind that he'd only turned 19 the day before.
Yeah,
incredibly young for a championship goalkeeper. And he was literally just thrown in. I think he must have known just a few hours before. I think Jack Bonham had come in. He was ill, and they sort of sent him away. And obviously, at that point, he was him and Blondie, who was the other one on the bench. So luckily, they made the right decision.
I didn't realise Eddie Harry was making a comeback.
Frankie Fielding's gutted. He spent 2.5 years here, not made an appearance.
Oh dear.
But yeah, he's sorry, I got a bit of a cough. His distribution was really good. I was really impressed with. Like, he took his time. I mean, it was 0-0 until the very last minute. But I mean, with his goal kicks, he would be, he was calm. He was making sure that he was doing it on his terms, like wasn't rushing or getting panicky because we weren't winning that match. And he's like I say, he was. His long kicking was really good. He was picking out Mehdi Lloris. That's one big tactic that we do use, is sort of ping it out to the right wing, and Lloris can come in and we'll sort of try and win the header, and then obviously the flick on from there, you try and pick up the second ball. And he was just with sort of seemingly no effort, just picking out Lloris to feet and to head from like 60 yards away. So we were like, okay, this he's got something about him. Yeah, you can. Like I say, and he was quick off his line a couple of times to come out to the edge of the box to either gather the ball or just clear it. A couple of shots he got, like I say, they were quite tame efforts, but he still held on to him well. Claimed a couple of corners. It was really impressive, really. But at the same time, I was looking to think I wouldn't like to think he would have to play there every week, because at this stage, I don't think it'd do him in the long term any good. Yeah,
I do think though that if he's had the odd decent game in the Championship, maybe he's at a stage where League One clubs, bottom 8 League One clubs might be interested in a loan. Just the final point, Dan. Obviously, it looks like consolidation in mid-table is the best Stoke can hope for in terms of this season. Do you get a feeling that the club now has a bit of a long-term vision, a bit of a strategy? Because that was one of the things Schumacher spoke about in his first interview.
Yeah, I think there's a bit more direction now. I think we've got a way that we want to play. I think we've got a way that we want to coach, a way that we want to move. And I think the whole club around numerous people is sort of geared in the same direction now. I think if you can start winning some home games, you'll very quickly get the fans on board. They're sort of turning up at the minute, but they're not having a lot to shout about. So it is literally just a case of them turning up, and then on about 88 minutes when we can see him go 1-0 down, they groan and leave. That's pretty much how it's been recently. So obviously, if he can inherit his, bring his home record from Plymouth with him, that'll be much appreciated. I think it's been a long time since we've had made the Bet365 a fortress. So yeah, that'll be great. Like I say, consolidate this season. I think. We've got him in, and I think we should be able to get ourselves up into mid-table. We've shown in games against Leeds, Sunderland, Middlesbrough that we've got a decent squad. Just needed somebody to mould them into a decent side.
Yeah, hopefully Schumacher can do that. I imagine the main assignment for Schumacher is to get the best out of the current players because of the investment that you put in the summer. But I'm wondering, do you think there will be scope for him to bring in one or two in January?
Yeah, I think he's going to have to bring a goalkeeper in. I think Mark Travers I think he's not actually got on the pitch for Bournemouth, so I believe that he hasn't sort of triggered the two-club in what. Although he's been on the bench, we believe that he can sign for literally anybody at this stage.
Right.
So it would have been helpful if they'd have just stuck him on for like at least a minute or something. So it's like he can only come back to Stoke. So we hoping to get him back in January. But yeah, if not him, it's definitely need a competent goalkeeper. No offense to Jack Bonham. Sorry. And then I think it's weird because we've got plenty of midfielders, we've got plenty of sort of strikers, wingers. You just need to get them to sort of fire, if you like, find the right combinations. We were speaking to an Argyle fan last night, so we did a Spaces sort of on Twitter, and he was sort of saying that he does a lot of rotation. Steven Schumacher, there's like 5-6 changes most games. I was like, well, that'll be perfect for our squad then, because we have got a lot of players in key positions, and it'll just keep people fresh. He might want an experienced centre half. I mean, we've got Kieran Clark, but when he came in, I think we conceded like 10 in 3 games, so it wasn't ideal. Sort of when he came, I'm not saying they were all his fault, but we went from conceding none in 4 to 10 in 3. Getting Ben Wilmot back in the new year will be like a new signing as well. I think if we can get Wilmot back fit, probably a centre half and a goalkeeper, and then maybe some cover / competition for Ender Stevens at left wing back if he's going to play.
That's what I was wondering about, actually. Yeah, left back perhaps. Because I reckon the way Schumacher operates, he'll probably, if he plays with a back three, I think he'd probably like Ender Stevens maybe on the left of a back three rather than actually left wing back, because that's what he's done with a Plymouth Argyle player called Macaulay Gillespie, who was in a similar boat. So that'd be.
It was interesting as well when we played the last game we played at West Brom. We went 5 at the back. Paul Gallagher did, and I wondered whether there was some sort of they knew something and they were sort of trying the formation out. Keanu Hoover played on the right side of those 3, and he's somebody I thought. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's nowhere near the level, but I know that Kyle Walker played sort of there for England, didn't he? And he was like, his pace was good, sort of mopping up behind the other defenders who would maybe challenge, and he could sort of mop. And I think for Hoover, that could be his sort of role in that sort of formation, because his pace is probably his best attribute when he's defending anyway.
Absolutely. Dan, thanks so much for your time, and keep up the great work with the Every Step Along the Way podcast.
Not at all. Pleasure.
Well, I'm joined here by Joe Bell from the excellent Argyle Life and the Green and White podcast. Joe, a bit of an eventful time to be talking about Plymouth Argyle, isn't it? Steven Schumacher has departed for Stoke City after winning the League One title last season and continuing the excellent work done by Ryan Lowe. How do you reflect on his tenure with Argyle?
When you messaged me at the weekend trying to get me on tonight, Gab, I thought it'd be a nice, simple chat about us being points away from the drop zone. One normal week at this football club, that's all we ever want. How do I reflect on his time? With great memories, really. I mean, let's be fair, it was one hell of a gamble 2 years ago by the board to give him the role, and he more than repaid them. Even that half a season he had, really, I mean, the games, the performances we put in that run, the Chelsea FA Cup game, for 40 minutes we lived the dream there. And then he had the rebuild in the summer. He knew where he needed to strengthen. And to get 101 points, 31 wins or something. I mean, we were trying to work out yesterday, by my count, there's only about half a dozen managers in our 130 plus year history who've ever won a title. So, you take away the raw emotion of everything that's gone on the last 72 hours, he will go down in the history books for what he's achieved. And it's just a gut-wrenching way that it's come to an end, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, from afar, I can kind of understand it, because it is more money. It is a bigger opportunity. You don't know in the chaotic nature of the football industry when that sort of opportunity is going to come again. It does help him look after his partner and his children. It's close to home. It's a club that's got a bigger likelihood of success in the sort of short to mid-term future. Is there a feeling from the majority of the fan base, do you think, Joe, that can understand Schumacher's decision as well as maybe the sort of the gut wrencher of him leaving?
I think in time, when the dust settles a little bit, I think people will probably come round to it. I think the problem is, and I go back to it every time this happens, and unfortunately, for whatever reason, this seems to happen to us more than most clubs, in the respect that we have a good thing going, and then all of a sudden it's snatched from underneath us. And that's we go back to the day of Ian Holloway when he left to go to Leicester, and he was selling us the dream. You know, he was going to paint the lighthouse green and white and cut him open, he bleeds green and things. And, you know, even from that moment, the younger generation now have never really learned to trust a manager. We obviously were getting there with people like Derek Adams and then Ryan Lowe, and obviously Derek's tenure ended sourly, and Ryan obviously up sticks to go to Preston, and that was a bit sour as well. There was no real mention about his time at Argyle, and Shuey stayed, and he took on the icon status. Really, he stayed to see the job through, and to be fair to him, he's done that. You know, they came in 4 and a bit years ago as part of the 5-year plan to get us from League Two to the Championship. He's finished that plan off. So for him, it's job done. It's the timing of it, Gab. It doesn't sit right. You know, we're in the middle of our busiest run of the season. We got the transfer window in less than a fortnight. You know, this is such an important season for the football club to stay in the Championship with the income that's going to come next year from the new TV deals and things like that. We're selling out every week. The place is bouncing. You know, Home Park is a really tricky place to come this season, which has probably surprised everyone that we've been able to maintain a strong run of form at home, even in this higher level. So in time, I think people might appreciate it a little bit more, but it's just the rawness that it always seems to end this way when we're onto a good thing with a manager. So I'm sure in future we might be able to find that longevity with somebody, but yeah, it's just a little bit tough at the moment, I would say.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. I think in terms of the transfer window, I don't really see Schumacher's exit being too much of a problem, because I think that who the club appoint, and certainly Kevin Nansville and co in the interim period, are going to basically they're going to let the people who run the recruitment, Neil Dewsnett, director of football, and Jimmy Dickinson, head of recruitment, and others, to really sort of take the lead on that. So I don't see that to be a huge destabilizer from that point of view. But obviously the club does have a new manager or head coach to look for now. What do you think the ideal next Argyle appointment would look and feel like for you, Joe?
Well, the first objective is to keep us in the Championship. That's the underline. That, you know, as soon as they come in, that's their first brief. And then in the summer they can reset and do what they like. Simon Hallett has stressed in his statement that we're not going to abandon the hard work that we've put in over the last 4 or 5 years about the philosophy of football. You know, he enjoys it. We all enjoy it as fans. You know, I mean, I've said to you numerous times when I've been on this podcast, at times, you know, we play some really good football, and everyone wants to see that. So we're not going to abandon our principles in that respect. You know, do we want another young manager who could potentially in 2 years' time be poached for a bigger and better opportunity? Would we much rather find someone middle of the road who's going to stay with us for a bit longer and try and see this plan through? I'm not sure. I suspect they're going to stick with the young coach mantra, allow them to be free, expressive. They can make mistakes. They'll have the ultimate trust of the board, which Shuey obviously had. And, you know, there's already a fair few interesting names, shall we say, being bandied about in that category. So time will tell. But I think as long as they're hungry and they can buy into what it's like to be a part of Plymouth Argyle. I was saying this on an interview on Radio Stoke yesterday morning, that it's not easy for people in the main land of the country, if you like, to understand what it's like to be A supporter of Plymouth Argyle,
Plymouth
but
isn't
B
in
to
Ireland,
work.
Joe. Have you not found out this?
It feels like we're cut off, Gab. But what
I
I'm
wondered
saying
if
is,
you've never moved to anywhere else in the UK, so you just
I don't
assumed
I
that.
don't go east of Ivy Bridge. It scares me. But we're so on a limb. We're so out of the way that when you're in the big cities of Manchester, Liverpool, Birmingham, places like that, you've got so many clubs around you. Whereas down here, it's all Argyle. And when the club does well, the city does well. And that's the one thing that Schumacher's managed to do over the last couple of years is really pull everyone together. We're selling tens of thousands of club shirts now, which we've never done. Even in the glory days of when we were last in the Championship, we were never selling that quantity of shirts. All right, they're smart designs and things, but that's because people are proud of the club again. So whoever comes in has to really buy into that. Personally, I know it's difficult depending on people's circumstances. I think it's vitally important that they live in the area. I think they've got to fully immerse themselves in the experience. I think we're done now with people commuting from where their family is and things. I think if you're going to take the job, then you've got to be fully involved in it, just because, as I say, just how far away we are from everything.
Do you know what? That's a really interesting point, because Michael Duff, when he was Swansea City manager, he spent part of his time in Swansea and part of his time in Cheltenham. And I actually admired his honesty about that, because he felt like he wasn't prepared to uproot his children and sort of destabilise his family, which I really admire that integrity. And I think that shows he's a responsible father and all the rest of it. But I do kind of get your point of view as well, that you do want someone to really buy into the fabric of the football club. How would you fancy someone like Brian Barry Murphy, Manchester City's development squad head coach, someone along those lines?
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw the thread that I can't remember who it was put out about Brian Barry Murphy this morning. It made for really interesting reading. I think they sort of didn't make too much mention to Rochdale's relegation. I do somewhat think that some powers of control were out of his hands with that.
100%, yeah.
I don't think that's so. I don't think you can put that on his shoulders. I think that's the sort of coach we're probably looking at. Obviously there's the talk about Leighton Baines and people like that. I mean, that would be as left field as they probably come, taking him out of, I think it's one season.
Or Ashley Cole, that would be another left field one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I think you've mentioned my number one target there. Michael Duff would be at the forefront of my mind. I think you've just got to put a line through Swansea, because for whatever reason, it just was never going to work. He never clicked with the fans. He never really seemed to have a total support of the board at Swansea. It didn't help losing to Cardiff, I accept that. But you look at the job he did to Barnsley when they were fractured and all over the place as a club. I mean, he glued them together. And I've always said it, that the back end of last season, they were the ones I was more fearful of nabbing an extra promotion place rather than Sheffield Wednesday, because they came with a real rattle at the end of the season. And I mean, you can't say enough about the job he did at Cheltenham.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think it's only now that people really appreciate just how good a job that was. I'm a big admirer of Duff. I think he's a really good character. I know some people took him the wrong way when he was at Swansea with some of his comments. But I
think he's authentic, though. Like, he's not going to pretend to be something that he's not. And don't get me wrong, I like it when a manager shows a bit of passion and shows that side. But if it's authentic, but if it's kind of you're just doing it just to appease people, I feel like that. I'd rather someone was just authentic and true to who they are. So
I agree with that. And Duff would be at the forefront of my mind, because if you do forget Swansea, if Swansea never happened, he probably would be right on everyone's.
You sound like you're talking about a parallel universe there. If Swansea never happened.
That's what I'm saying. Plymouth's an island and Swansea don't exist. So
that's what we've established. Brilliant stuff, Joe. Thanks so much for your time.
No worries.
Lovely stuff on the Green and White podcast. So thanks for talking to us, and I'll let you get back to your day.
Cheers, Gab. Thank you, mate.
Cheers. Joe Bell talking there from Argyle Life and the Green and White podcast on Plymouth Argyle, after we heard Dan speak from the Every Step Along the Way podcast on Stoke City. Now rejoined by our co-host Martin Sanders, and we've also got Jonny Bullock from the Boro Breakdown. Jonny, thanks so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your time. Just wondering how you're feeling about Boro. You're in the semi-finals of the League Cup, but you're buzzing about that.
Yeah, I think firstly, thanks for having me on again, man. Lovely to meet you as well. It's always a pleasure coming on here. And yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing. Yeah, of course. You know, I know I messaged you last night with our injury list, which isn't fun, but I love the parallels and the narrative of this semi-final because, you know, in 2003, 2004, we had our worst start to the season, parallel to this season, and also 20 years ago we won the Carabao Cup, which was the Carling Cup then, and we were in the semi-finals then. So
Gareth Southgate captained the team then, didn't he?
He did, and I know I don't know how to fit him into the narrative there, but yeah, you know,
I think
we're going all the way. You know,
I mean, I'm just going to name ex-Middlesbrough players now, like Jose did his ERA job.
You know? Yeah, well, you know, Latte and Joseph Desiree job. They were, I think, obviously bought Cameroon from Latte for job, but you know, Ivory Coast for Latte. I mean, both French-speaking nations, you know, so it makes sense. It's all coming together.
Absolutely, the year's ending 3-4 as well. So you know,
3-4.
Absolutely, it's all ticking over. Jonny, you mentioned those injuries there. How big a hit have they had on Middlesbrough, and how have they sort of dictated what the club's got to try and do in January?
We've had a shocker, haven't we? We've had an absolute shocker. 14 players out now. It's been getting bigger and bigger, this list, over the last couple of weeks. You know, it has affected performances. It really has. I think to say it hasn't is a lie. You know, the quality you miss, and you're not finishing teams off, and you see the bit of rust there. And also we make some silly decisions as well. And how it affects January, I don't think it affects it too much. You know, we've still got Lenihan and Smith out for the rest of the season, but we've got the longer term ones like Hackney's redone his hamstring, or Brian's going to be end of January. Van Berg, I saw back. We don't know anything about Forsall McGree yet, and you know, and the game last night, you know, there was more injuries happening, and you know, thinking, good God, like if you look at Middlesbrough's starting 11 now of injuries, it's pretty much our first team actually. So, but yeah, that's a bit of a shame. But I don't think January's going to change too much. I still think we'll bring in maybe 3 or 4, and I wouldn't be surprised, Gab, if they were probably mostly permanent. I can definitely see Middlesbrough moving into that space of maybe signing 1 or 2 in the summer and keep building, because we've went through this whole rebuilding of the summer that's just gone to try and build for the future. And I think January would be no different, to be honest.
Martin, do you admire it when clubs are able to take a bit of a step back from the short-term game and actually try and build a squad over a longer period?
Yeah, I really like what Michael Carrick's done at Middlesbrough. I like him as a manager. Obviously, he had a phenomenal end to last season. It was always going to be hard to get going again this season. And I was just looking at your fixtures, actually, Jonny. I over this festive period, and last time I looked at Middlesbrough, I was looking at reviewing some Championship games, and I saw the injury list at that stage was around 8. I didn't realise it's got to the extent it is at. Hackney is a brilliant player. He must be a massive miss, because every time I've watched Hayden Hackney, he looks outstanding for you. But when you look at the 4 games that you've got to play over this festive period, obviously the home game against West Brom this weekend is going to be tough. Then it's Rotherham away, Huddersfield away, then Coventry at home. How do you see those 4 panning out with the injury concerns that you have?
Yeah, difficult. Really difficult. You know, we've had some tough games just gone, and I think the injuries has really played a part in getting the results that we wanted to. And the one over the festive period, I think, you know, West Brom have been fantastic having them so far this season. It's going to be really difficult. I think Carlos has done an amazing job there, and it's going to be tough for us. I think I'd take a draw any day of the week against them. And, you know, when you go towards the foot of the table, again, the tough games, because you sometimes need a bit of quality to bail you out. And given that we've lost a lot of it, it can be quite difficult. And then Coventry seems to be a really difficult tie for us at the moment. And credit to them, you know, like I've always been a big admirer of Coventry over the last few seasons, and I always think they were going to get to a certain point, whether they're going to explode or and go straight up, or they'll phase out. And they're all really difficult games. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we get someone or one or two or maybe three back during the festive period, because it'll make a massive difference, to be honest. Losing Rodgers, Jones, Crooks, and like I laughed last night is just, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Like, the fact that is pun intended, like, just because of just what was happening. So really difficult, really difficult. I would take, I would take 6 points, probably 6 to 8 points. I really would. A full strength squad, you're hoping to try and take as many as you can, aren't you, and try and get double figures there. But right now, I just want us to stay close to the playoffs, get the signings in, get people keep people back, and then hopefully go on a run again in the second half of the season.
Absolutely. I think the thing that's really strikes me, Jonny, about the players that you're missing is probably some of that energy against the ball. Like Marcus Force can provide it, Hayden Hackney can provide it, Lewis O'Brien can certainly provide it, Riley McGree's just relentless. Like, these are all players who have just got that kind of sprint mentality. And I've looked at Middlesbrough at times this season and felt like you may be missing that in some quarters. So, to get some of those players back, I think could make an enormous difference.
Oh, Gab, it would make a massive difference. The one time we've been really, really good without the ball was Leicester, and how we controlled that game without the ball was superb. And we've always known that under Carrick we've been a bit suspect of transitions, and it's natural. It's just maybe a small chink in the system there, but the overall side of things, overall, like, it's been really good under him. But we do miss that energy, Gab. I fully agree with you, and if we can try and get a couple of those bodies back, then I'm excited. I want to see, for the second half of the season, we get the right recruitment. I'm really, really excited to see what we can do.
In terms of the recruitment, I reckon Boro could. I feel like, because while you're not at a stage, especially with the injuries, that's brilliant without the ball as a collective, I reckon just an individual who's like super tenacious and physical and can just really get about the pitch and put challenges in. I think that sort of player, even if they're not necessarily brilliant technically, and I know you want to be a possession-based side, but just one player who can just do that, for me, I think that's what the club's got to be looking at, as well as probably a centre forward as well.
Yeah, centre forward is definitely something on our shopping list. Dog's going nuts because my partner just came in. But it's that and a number 10 to tie it all together is something we really miss Akpom, don't we? You can hear my dog going absolutely nuts.
The dog's weighing in on the conversation, I think.
Yeah, he's just saying, honestly, we're screaming for number 10. And, obviously, to lose Akpom with 20 odd goals, to lose Archer as well, to lose Ramsey, and to lose Giles as well, lose 66 goals, you need to find something, don't you, to tie it together. And yeah, that number 10's vital, the centre forward, but also when you're saying there on getting a tackle in, we had one at the club in Sam Morsey and we let him go for nothing, and he was brilliant against us, brilliant, and it was such a shame to. It was nice to see him play at the Riverside, because we can speak now and again, but it was also like dire to kind of say, like, why do we let someone like this go when we really needed him? But yeah, I agree with you, Gab. We're desperate about the 3 or 4 that we need, and probably a right back as well. So we're in desperate need of that too.
That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned you're excited for the second half of the season. How do you rate your playoff chances?
I believe we can do it. I really do. You know how optimistic I can be, and a bit too much of the rose-tinted glasses sometimes. But honestly, I really am optimistic. We've got the underlying numbers in our favour, which is always a good thing, because creating good chances, we're not giving too much away, and we just need the bodies back. And if we get recruitment right, then I can't see why not, Gab. I can't see why not. And is it going to be difficult? Absolutely is, because I'm expecting Leeds to be there. I'm expecting Southampton to be there.
The top 4, I think, are non-negotiable in terms of top 6.
Yeah.
So then I think it's only 2 spots that are open, and I really like Hull, and I rate Carlos Corberán at West Brom really highly. So I think it's going to be difficult, but.
Yeah, definitely. I was going up my head. I would probably, if it was between us, Hull, and West Brom, I would say us and West Brom. I just think there's just something slightly missing at Hull at the minute, but there's nothing that January can't fix for them, because they've got a great manager in Rosenior, and they really are going in the right direction, aren't they? So they're just missing a couple of things. I think just that extra bit of quality, and they'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, well, Middlesbrough certainly on the right track, broadly speaking, but a bit of a frustrating one at the moment in terms of the injuries. Jonny, thanks so much for joining us, and keep up the fantastic work on the Borough Breakdown podcast.
Yeah, cheers, Gab. Cheers, man. Lovely to speak to you.
Nice
Cheers,
one.
Jonny.
Merry
Take care.
Christmas.
Best wishes.
Delighted to bring in Ollie Hargreaves from the Butter Pie podcast of Preston North End, although we've had to cancel this one, Ollie, at late notice because you've not done anything in football. So, none of us are qualified to speak about it. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Gav. I'll keep the football opinions to myself. But yeah, all good. How are you both?
Yeah, we're really well, thanks. It's I think Ryan Lowe's comments a little bit inflammatory, you might say, at a time where people are questioning North End's performances, and they've been ripped apart a little bit after I think a good start to the season in terms of results, where you're able to edge out some tight games, and then luck went against you a little bit in the next sort of period of the season, and then more recently you've just been kind of completely torn apart by the likes of Watford. So has that sort of concerned you a little bit on top of those comments?
I think the comments were probably on the cherry on the top recently. As you mentioned, we had a fantastic start to the season. We were high flying and we were superb. And as of recent, we've been in relegation form. So that was you probably look at the league table now, see us in 8th. I mean, I was just on the Swansea podcast and he was speaking, you're up in 8th, it's going to be a tough game. And then, after we go into underlying form of, 3 wins in our past 15 games, 1 win in 6, you start to get to grips with what's going on. It's been a bit of a roller coaster event. We started off on the Pepsi Max, got all the way to the top, and the past 15 games have just been an absolute plummet. And then obviously, it looks like Lowe's a man under a lot of pressure at the moment, and he's come out with them comments because as all managers do, when you're highly under pressure, you come out with comments that not a lot of people like. And obviously, it probably makes it a bit harder for him in trying to win the fans back on board. But as I mentioned, football's a results-based business. You got 4 games very, very close to each other. Swansea away, Luton at home on Boxing Day, Wednesday at home, I think around about 29th, and then Sunderland away. So, these games will shape up how Ryan Lowe's tenure at Preston North End goes. To be fair, I'm going off on a tangent here, but it's not just Ryan Lowe that you'll have to lay off. I know Preston North End haven't got the greatest of budgets. Peter Risdale does mention a lot about FFP. Lowe brought in a lot of his own staff. You got Mike Marsh, you've got a first team coach because Gallagher went off to Stoke, and then he's brought out all these analysts and recruitment. So you're looking at potentially laying 10 or 11 people off with compensation as well. So it's a pricey one, and I think realistically that's the only thing that's possibly keeping Ryan Lowe in the job at the moment.
That good start was so important, wasn't it? Because you just accumulated those points early on, and it's probably, you look at the league position at the moment, like you say, it doesn't look too bad, does it, Ollie? But it was just that really good start. That I do fear for those 4 games over Christmas look really, really tough, don't they? To go down to Swansea and obviously to take on Leeds, and Sheffield Wednesday are on a resurgent, aren't they, under Danny Rowe at the moment, and then Sunderland, a new manager going in there, and it looks tough, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a really, really tricky run, and to be fair, we do have the players, but when you're so low after Ryan Lowe, when you're so low after the recent results, it's going to get worse before it gets better in my eyes. I don't know if that's a negative.
What's changed since the start of the season then? What's the difference been? What's gone wrong?
I mentioned this to Gab, actually. I think at the start of the season, Ryan Lowe didn't have that much options because we were very hampered with injuries. and it kind of forced him to play this one style, and it worked. And now he's got backups and recruitments, and he's kind of trying to shoehorn his best players into a team when it might not be the best for the team, if that's anything to go off.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bit mixed matchy all over the place. So he's trying to play conservative football, and then also play, because our defence is, in recent times, it has been shoddy, to say the least. So realistically, you're going to have two holding midfielders in front of the back three, as well as wing backs. So where's the creativity coming from? And then you're just asking for it at that point.
I tell you what, Ollie, where I probably do have a bit of sympathy for Ryan Lowe is a lot of the criticism that he gets is that he's not playing Mads Frokjær Jensen, and I can agree because I was as big a fan of Frokjær Jensen as anyone at the start of the season because he was absolute joy to watch. At the same time, I've kind of acknowledged your point that maybe he isn't one for tracking back, and then you've got Liam Miller at left wing back who basically operates like a winger and leaves your left side massively exposed. So I feel like getting the balance between your Millers, your Frokjærs, your Whitemans, you could argue as well, with your Browns, your Ledsons, your McCanns, and it just felt like every time Lowe's tried to find a solution, it's just the balance has just been a little bit off kilter.
Yeah, I suppose I just think the system doesn't work, Gab. He's stuck to his guns. He's played this formation with wing backs for a while. Three at the back. I think it's run its course. We've got Jack Watmore who's come in as of recent. He's done very, very well.
Oh yeah, Lindsay's been playing left for back three, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's not a wide centre half, Gabby.
No.
It's painful to watch.
Is Andrew Hughes injured? Remind me.
No, no, he's just playing Lindsay out there. But as I mentioned, he's trying to shoe on his best players in, and Lindsay's been a very good stud at central centre half, and he's trying to fit him in. For me, we now have the players, to play a back four. You've got Hughes, you've got Ramsey back fit. You can potentially have Lindsay and Watmore. You can then play a 4-2-3-1. I mean, I know I'm not one for giving out football opinions to Ryan Lowe because I've never been in football, but in that stead you can get your two creative players in Liam Miller and Mads Frokjær Jensen on the pitch at the same time. You can play him on the right, you can play Miller on the left, and then you still have your two holding midfielders in front of it. But I mean, I'm just saying it out of my own pocket at this point because it's never going to happen. Lowe's not going to change his system. He's going to try and change the personnel, and it's just a bit of a mess at the moment. It's like the past couple of games, it's kind of been like football roulette because at this stage, he can't really stick to a team if you're losing games. You're at the stage now where you're a manager, you really need it for something to work. And if it doesn't work, you change it straight away. And I think that's what might happen too often. The fact that, we're changing so often, we're changing personnel, and it has to work. Which I think, is a bit of his downfall at the moment because I don't think Ryan Lowe's got really a plan B. We go a goal down, we're not really going to get back into the game. You look at the Watford game, we're fantastic. We scored first. We were superb the first half. Our XG was fantastic, which is, like having a nosebleed because I know we're in a relegation battle of XG. And then obviously the second half, that kick-off routines just absolutely shot us in the foot. And then from there, you're running an uphill battle. So there's not really much plan B at the moment. So when things go wrong, they go really wrong.
The good thing, I suppose, is that you have got a pretty healthy tally as it is. So 12-point gap to the drop zone. So if we're saying 50 points keeps you up, then you're looking at another 4 wins or so. And then, if you get a few draws in there, I'd say about 6 draws from the last 24 games, which, should easily be doable.
Yeah. It's not just me, but I find it absolutely baffling how we're talking about survival from 8th place. It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy how we're talking. But that's the way it feels. I think we'll be safe. To be fair, there's this is not me saying Preston's the greatest football team in the world, but you know we're much better than 3 teams in this division. You know, we blew past Huddersfield. They were like, this is no disrespect to Huddersfield. I've got a Huddersfield friend. He'll agree with it. They were absolutely catastrophic against us. And then obviously, you know, there's probably going to be 2 others. I know Rotherham are struggling at the moment. But take out obviously the form at the start of the season, we'd be there or thereabouts around the relegation battle. And you know, without the start of the season, Lowe would definitely not have a job at Preston North End if you know the form carried on the way that it is. So it's got to pick up now, or it's now or never time, really, gents. And you know, we'll just have to wait and see how he does it.
Absolutely. Ollie, thanks so much for joining us. It's been great to get your insights from the Butter Pie podcast. Thanks also to Martin Sanders for joining us from Southampton podcasting sphere as well. This has been the EFL Debate Championship podcast, and we'll see you again next week.